The breakthrough came when one day, literally, I was picking up a water glass and I noticed an optical effect that happened. I can notice my fingerprints actually imaged really quite clearly against the side of the glass. And you realize right there, it's like, wow, there's some optical phenomenon happening there. Did a little research, you look it up. The phenomenon is quite well known. It's called frustrated total internal reflection. You inject light into a piece of acrylic or glass, it mostly stays trapped inside there. However, if there's something actually interfering with that material-air boundary, you can actually disrupt that phenomenon. And that's exactly the phenomenon that we exploit to make our sensor. I've always been interested in sensors. I have an electrical engineering background. I love that interface, that I/O between the computer and the person. When you can actually accommodate both your hands with a lot of room to move. It's very high res both in graphics resolution and in tactile resolution. Most touchscreens that you see out there that you might see in an ATM or a kiosk can only sense one point of contact at a time. What we've developed here is a multi-touch sensor. That is the ability for the sensor to understand not just one, but indeed any number of points of contact on there. 2, 3, 5 from each hand, multiple users together. And we also have the ability to determine pressure, which is really, really interesting. Another untapped area of computer-human interaction. It's still relatively unexplored what you can do with that interesting pressure information that you have. Our sensor allows for each contact point to be able to know actually how hard you're pushing on that. Sometimes you want to use a stylus because it's more precise. Other times you want the full flexibility and non-intrusiveness of being able to use just your finger, just because it's very kind of dynamic. It's traditionally been a very single user, kind of somebody's in control or somebody's driving the display. With something like this, it allows multiple people to work together very collaboratively, very neutrally, especially in creative scenarios such as storyboarding or brainstorming. It allows you to step back and see the big picture. What's interesting about these kind of interfaces, it allows a much more interactive and constructive way rather than a very presentation format. Multi-touch is so interesting because it allows the power user to do even more, to be even more of a power user. It's a little more interesting now to see what these kind of powerful user interfaces can do for the non-expert, the novice, whether it's a child or a grandparent. These are kind of interfaces that cross cultural boundaries. They're much more human, and it just opens up computing to an even wider user base.